Wife returned with strange clothes, smeared makeup, a confession about a party hookup, and now I'm planning our separation. My wife didn't come home last night. She went out with a couple of girlfriends, which is pretty normal for her. She's normally back around 2 a.m. on these nights, so I waited up. Around 2:30, I called to check in. She answered, and I could hear people in the background. She told me they went to a party but were leaving in a couple of minutes. She wasn't home by 3, so I texted. It delivered, but no reply. Around 4 a.m. I called again. It rang a couple of times before she sent me to voicemail. My wife finally came stumbling through the door at 6:47 a.m. this morning. I know the exact time because I was worried. She was wearing a dress she didn't leave the house in, with mesh leggings I've never seen either. The leggings had clearly been torn, and her makeup was smudged. My heart sank when I saw her. My immediate worry was that she had been assaulted. She only shook her head no when I asked her that. I asked her what she had been doing then. She only said that I knew what she had been doing, and that kind of confirmed what the voice in the back of my head had been screaming since she walked in. My wife cheated on me last night. I asked her who it was. She shrugged almost casually and said it was somebody they met at the club. She went back to his house and hooked up with him, then Ubered home. She then said she didn't want to fight and just wanted to sleep. So that's what she did. She's still asleep now, and didn't even take a shower before passing out. Suffice to say our relationship is over. We don't have any kids, and we rent, so it shouldn't be an extremely complicated process. I keep trying to reason myself out of it, pretending there might be something to salvage here. Update 1. I wasn't able to get the day off work yesterday because my boss kind of sucks. I was a complete mess at work yesterday though, so I was allowed to take the rest of the week as vacation, thankfully. I think I went through all of the stages of grief while my soon-to-be ex was sleeping. I wasn't expecting my post to get any attention at all. I just figured I needed to try to talk to someone about it, because I was not in a good headspace. I made the post in the morning, and by noon she was still conked out in the bedroom. I had processed things a bit more, and I had a rough plan in my head that I was starting to set in motion. I made a short list of questions I wanted answers to, gathered up all my important documents, laptop, etc. Then I went into the bedroom and started packing myself a suitcase. I know a lot of folks wanted me to kick her out. I did consider it, but honestly I'm not overly attached to this place. We just rent, and I'm in a lucky enough situation to be able to say that paying half the rent for a few months isn't going to financially end me. It'll sting a little bit, I won't lie. But I'll make it, and I feel like being around this place is only going to remind me of her anyway. I need to be looking forward, not back. She ended up waking up about halfway through me packing my suitcase. There was momentary confusion as she looked around the room, then she just started bawling. Maybe this is awful of me, but I didn't bother comforting her. I told her I had the screenshots of her Uber and text messages from her phone, and that plus her confirmation was enough that things between us were completely done. She didn't answer me, and just cried louder. I debated trying to continue the conversation, but I decided to just pack the rest of my suitcase and head back out to the living room until she came out. When she finally left the bedroom, she sat next to me on the couch and asked me if we could talk things through. I told her as calmly as possible that wasn't how things were going to work. I was going to ask questions, I wanted honest answers. She told me she'd be honest, so I proceeded. My voice was shaking the entire time. It was taking me everything to hold it together, but I kept going. Was this the first time she had cheated? She started crying before she answered that, then told me no, she had cheated on me multiple times over the course of our relationship. It was, and I'm going to use her words exactly here, just sex, a way for me to let off steam. None of it ever meant anything. I wrote a comment shortly after making my post that all the love couldn't just fade away in one swoop. Well, it can. It hit me right then that I wasn't dealing with my wife. The person I was married to literally wasn't in the room. This was someone different. She refused to tell me exactly how many times she had cheated, just more than last night. Had she used protection? No hesitation from her before she nodded her head emphatically. She seemed surprised I'd even asked that. I'm still going to get tested just to be safe. I did some research into timing and I'm going to look after it. Were her friends also cheating on their spouses? Yes, and no. I tried to get her to tell me which of her friends were cheating so I could get in contact with their spouses. She probably should have, because her refusal led to me messaging pretty much the romantic partner of every one of her girlfriends I could find on social media. There are a couple I don't know or couldn't find, but I did my part. Why did she do it? This was the answer that gutted me the most. I'm going to use her exact words again. I need to have sexual variety. I told her that it's not like our sex life is dull. She clarified. It's not the same as something new. I didn't even have a response to that one. I had expected something about me working too much, or not supporting her emotionally. Nope. She just fucked other guys because she felt like it, and wanted to have some fun. When I didn't respond, she started asking me about counseling and therapy. I reiterated that our relationship was over. I'd be leaving. What she did next disgusted me. My ex actually tried to have sex with me. She put her hands on me, and started trying to take off my clothes. I felt like I wanted to vomit, and pushed her away after a couple of seconds. She just kept telling me that she would figure out a way to fix it, that we would work through it together. I told her that there was no way, and she started bawling again. She went to the bathroom and locked herself inside. I was just sick of everything at that point. I called her mother, and told her what was going on. The full story too, the cheating, the questions I had asked, and the fact I was leaving. I've always had a good relationship with my ex's parents. They both decided to drive to town, which is about an hour for them. Once I knew someone was on the way, I just grabbed my things and left. Her waterworks in the bathroom were just annoying me because it felt hollow to me, especially given the answers to my questions. I ended up packing another bag before I left, and took all the things that I could think of that I felt sentimental attachment to, with me. I found a parking lot and sat in my car until I was able to get in contact with a buddy for a place to crash. I tried to take a nap, but I was running on way too much adrenaline. I knew when her parents had made it to the apartment because she started calling me. When I didn't answer those, she started texting me. She had gone from sad and crying to furious. Apparently I'm a fucking piece of shit for telling her mom everything. Whoops. I'm not sorry. I've received roughly 100 texts from her since leaving. They range from name-calling all the way to begging me to come back, to sending me pictures of the food she ate for some reason. I haven't responded to any of them. I feel like I said my piece before leaving. So that's where I'm at now. We didn't have joint finances, so that part was easy. I canceled all the subscriptions that go to my credit card just to be sure, and changed all my important passwords. I'm crashing on a friend's couch for the next bit, but I've got some feelers out to some short-term rental places until I can find something more permanent. I've got feelers out for a divorce attorney too. A coworker of mine had a recommendation, so barring something better I'll probably go with them. I also wanted to say that I was shocked how supportive everyone was, and thank you for that. Update 2. I didn't sleep much on the couch, and the little sleep I did get was the shallow kind where your brain won't stop trying to fill in blanks you really don't want filled. I got up early, showered, and went to a clinic as soon as they opened. Baseline tests done, more scheduled later. The nurse asked if I wanted to talk to someone after, and I said I was okay, then sat in my car for 20 minutes staring at the steering wheel because I wasn't. Her mom called while I was out. She asked me to meet her and her husband at a diner off the highway. I agreed because I didn't want to end up doing everything through text. When I got there, her dad stood up before I even hit the booth and hugged me like he thought I might bolt. He looked tired in a way I've never seen on him. Her mom had 2 napkins twisted into ropes in her hands. They apologized. Not for her, they made that clear, but to me, for how it played out. Her mom asked if I would talk to their daughter under our roof, with us home, and I told her no. Her dad said, "We'll make sure she doesn't bother you," and slid a spare apartment key across the table. He said, "She's with us all day. If you need to get the rest of your things, go. I don't want you in a position where you have to see her alone." He also offered to cover her half of the rent until the lease is up so I could get out clean. I told him I appreciate it, but I'm not going to put them in the middle of that. We settled on them being co-signers if the landlord needed it. That was as much as I could accept without feeling like I was taking advantage of how wrecked they looked. I went back to the apartment. It felt wrong unlocking my own door with their key. Everything looked exactly like I left it, which somehow made the air feel heavy. I packed properly this time. Clothes, tools, the weird old mug my grandfather left me, all the little crap you don't think about until you don't have it. I took the framed photos of us apart and just kept the frames. I told myself it was practical, but the empty frames looked like tiny funerals lined up on the table. There were 2 things I wasn't expecting that day. First was the tote bag. It was jammed behind the vacuum in the hall closet where we keep the winter stuff. I only found it because my boot got caught on the strap when I pulled out the suitcase. Inside was a dress. Not the one she'd come home in, but the same cut, same brand, different color. Price tag still safety pinned to the seam. 2 pairs of the same fishnet leggings, 1 pair already ripped along the thigh like someone had pre-cut a tear, still attached to a cardboard insert. A little bag with makeup wipes, travel perfume, a comb, a handful of mini toothpastes from dentists, and a single pair of flats that looked barely worn. A condom tin with 2 left. My chest felt hollow while I turned things over with my hands. I put everything back exactly how I found it. I took a picture of the tote sitting in the closet because I knew I'd second guess myself later and convince myself I imagined it. The second thing was a phone. It wasn't new. The back had hairline cracks through the glass like a spider web, and it was wrapped in a clear case with glitter that had clumped to one corner. It was in the top wicker basket by the front door where we keep spare gloves and Trader Joe's bags. I checked it because the top looked disturbed and the grocery bags were at the bottom. It was dead. I shouldn't have, but I took it with me and plugged it in at a coffee shop. It buzzed to life, and the background was a default wallpaper. No biometrics set, no lock. I don't have a good explanation for why it was open like that beyond assuming she's cocky or stupid, and my brain isn't charitable enough for the first one anymore. I didn't sit there and read every message like I was watching a car crash in slow motion. I couldn't have even if I wanted to. Just seeing the notifications roll across the screen made the back of my neck prickle. A Snapchat group called Thirsty Thursdays, muted. A Telegram chat named Book Club with the book emoji and 3 martini glasses. An album in the Photos app literally called Costumes. I didn't scroll through that. I opened the Telegram one because I wanted names. There were names. Her core friends, plus 2 I only recognized as occasional brunch faces. You don't need me to retype the whole conversation. Cliff notes from the last couple months were enough to paint it. Meetings that were actually gym nights, talk about swapping in the bathroom, what bars had the best music and the fewest creeps, rules like no repeat customers and no one local enough to be a problem. Points, they joked about points. New place, 1. Balcony, 2. Older guy, -1. Car? Gross but 3 points. One message in particular said, keep a neutral kid in your trunk so no one recognizes pics. Then a picture of a bag and fishnets. The same brand as the ones in the tote in my closet. I took photos of a few key messages with my phone and then turned the screen face down and just breathed for a minute. I think the barista thought I was about to pass out because she came over and asked if I wanted water. I said yes with a voice I barely recognized. I texted the partners I'd been able to find. Not more than that. I wasn't trying to be some crusader. Just, here are screenshots, dates, use this how you want. One of them, a guy named Dan who's married to one of her closest friends, called me immediately. He was very calm in the way people get when they are holding something heavy and pretending it's not heavy. He told me they had a baby monitor in their living room because their toddler's room is right off it. He'd gone back through recordings after my message and watched his wife come in at 4:12 a.m. and take her shoes off like she was trying not to wake anyone. He said, thank you, I guess, and hung up before either of us had to try to make it normal. If you're wondering if someone reached out from the other side of my wife's little adventure, yes. His girlfriend did. Not last night's guy, somebody from 2 months ago. She found my message to her partner on his iPad when it pinged. She sent me a straightforward, bare-bones text, is, wife's name, your wife? I said yes. She said, thank you for telling me. I didn't know. We ended up talking for 10 minutes, tops. She cried once. It didn't break me like I thought it might. It felt like hearing someone describe the same car crash from the other lane. After that, I went to see a lawyer. She was brisk and not unkind. We went over the basics. No kids, no house, separate finances, lease ending in 4 months. She asked me how I wanted service handled. I told her I didn't want to sit in the same room with my wife ever again if I could help it, but I also didn't want her parents to get blindsided in their own home. She nodded and had a process server handle it at our apartment while my wife was back there gathering some clothes with her mom. I didn't know that would happen until it was already done. My phone lit up like the 4th of July. How could you? I said I was sorry. Then it turned on a dime. What did you show them? Why are you doing this to me? The last one was just please repeated 17 times. She showed up at my buddy's place that night. I don't know how she knew where I was. I guess she called around. She pounded at the door with a fleshy, open palm kind of knock that's more dramatic than effective. My friend cracked it and told her to leave before he called the police. She tried to look around him and say my name like I was going to come out. I didn't. She started crying, but it was the kind of crying where you can hear the engine humming under it. My friend is a lot kinder than I am. He didn't slam the door until she stepped back and said, I'll wait. He told her he was calling a wellness check, and that got her moving. Her mom texted me later to say my wife had been served and had left with them. I told her I appreciated the heads up and that I was sorry she was collateral damage. She sent a single heart emoji back after 5 minutes, like she had to go find it with both hands. The landlord meeting the next day was surprisingly smooth. I explained everything I needed to without extra details. He was sympathetic, probably more because he wants that rent coming in without drama than anything else, but I'll take pragmatism. He said if she could qualify to carry the lease, he'd remove me. She can't, not on her salary alone. Her parents agreed to co-sign. We all signed an addendum that afternoon. He told me to return my keys by the end of the week and change my address with the mail carrier. I walked out and immediately downloaded every change of address form like I was trying to outpace the part where I'd lived there at all. I did one more trip to the apartment with an officer standing in the doorway. That was on my lawyer's advice. Clean break, witnesses, no he said / she said over who took the succulents, basically. It felt like overkill until I was there and saw my wife sitting on the arm of the couch in a robe with damp hair, picking at her cuticles. She looked small. I felt nothing. Which was weird, because the day before I'd been vibrating with emotion and now the needle was just straight at 0. She tried to talk to me while I unplugged the TV. She said, we were fine. Why are you doing this? The officer cleared his throat and my wife's eyes flashed at him just for a second before she composed herself. I'm doing this because it's done, I said. I thought she might throw something at me. Instead she stood up and took 2 steps forward and reached for my shirt. I took 2 steps back and said, don't. Her mouth opened, closed. She said, I don't even know how many times I've apologized. She hadn't. Not really. She had said words that took up the space of an apology and none of the weight. I took the TV, a suitcase, my box of old letters, and left. If you're curious how her friends took any of this, I didn't have to guess for long. 2 of the partners I messaged replied with already knew, we have an arrangement. That floored me for about 2 seconds until I realized people like to feel above something by pretending they're not touched by it. One guy, the husband of a woman I'll call C, called me from the parking lot of their gym. He was breathing like he'd sprinted to the car. He said he'd confronted C on the sidewalk and she'd laughed at him. Laughed. Told him he was being dramatic. He asked me to send the screenshots I had because if he was going to be dramatic he wanted to be thorough. I sent them while I stood in a Walgreens next to a rack of seasonal hand towels. There's a knock-on effect to telling one person a thing like this. People start coordinating. Dan looped me and another guy onto a group text so he could say thanks at once because he felt weird doing it individually. Then he added a sorry for whatever you're going through. None of us deserve to find out this way. I stared at none of us for a long minute. It felt like standing in a room and realizing all the windows are the same window. The last thing I did before I gave the key back was open her trunk. I don't know why. Maybe because of that neutral kit in your trunk line. There it was. A gym bag with generic gym clothes on top, and underneath a plastic dry cleaning bag with another dress in it. Same brand again. Another pair of the fishnets. A little mouthwash bottle. She hadn't even been hiding very hard. Or maybe I just hadn't been looking very hard. Both can be true. I filed the petition the next morning. No fault, irreconcilable differences, whatever language you want to slap on a wound to make it look sterile. My lawyer said it'll go faster than it feels. I don't know what that means yet. She also told me not to contact the guy my wife was with in the last 24 hours aside from telling his partner if I could find her. People do stupid things when they feel implicated. That was her phrase. I thought about that phone again face down on the coffee table like a mouth closed over something sharp. I moved into a short-term rental yesterday. It's a studio with a lot of light and a weirdly low ceiling in the kitchenette. The bed is brand new enough to still smell like plastic. I cooked pasta for myself and it tasted like paste, but I ate it anyway and put the fork in the sink and stood there looking at the single fork like I'd never lived by myself before. I slept. Like actually slept. When I woke up I didn't feel okay, but I didn't feel like someone had hollowed me out with a spoon either. That felt like progress. I got one more message worth mentioning. It was from a guy I didn't know. He introduced himself as the brother of one of my wife's friends. He said, she lied to me too, for what it's worth. Then he sent me a screenshot of a DM my wife had sent him 2 weeks ago. It was her asking him if he knew any good after-hours spots downtown for me and my girls and then, in the next bubble, discreet is better, lol. He wrote, I told her no. I thought she was joking. Sorry. I stared at that lol and felt weirdly grateful to him for reminding me that this isn't happening to me because I did something wrong, or didn't do something right. It's happening because someone I married decided the part where you promise things means less than the part where you get to negotiate loopholes around them. The only time I felt anger in a clean, sharp line today was when my wife sent me a long text at lunch. She said she'd talked to a therapist, and the therapist said we should communicate. She said, we could redefine what marriage looks like. She said, we could make rules. She said, I'm not built for monogamy but I am built for you. I didn't respond. Not to that, not to the photo of the avocado toast she sent 3 hours later like we were in the middle of a normal day. I put my phone face down and took a long shower and let hot water hit that bruise under my ribs where all of this sits. There isn't a bow on this. There's a stack of paperwork, a key I won't use again, a bag of fishnets I didn't buy in a closet that won't be mine by the end of the week. There's a studio apartment where I'm going to figure out how to want coffee again, and a lawyer who says this'll be done before the leaves are gone, and a handful of men I've never met saying, same, that's what's new. That's enough for right now. Update 3. The studio smells like cardboard and detergent and the plasticky new mattress, and for the first time in a while I woke up without immediately trying to inventory damage. It didn't last. My phone lit up at 8:11 with an unknown number and for a second I thought it was the clinic. It was my landlord instead, the old place. He said my mail slot was stuffed and asked if I wanted them to hold it at the office. I told him yes and was halfway into jeans before I realized I was moving like a wind-up toy. I drove over anyway because there was a part of me that needed to put my key on his desk and walk away on purpose. He had rubber banded a pile of envelopes together and set them on a legal pad like he thought they might leak. It was credit card offers, a flyer for a salsa class, something from a dental clinic, and a thick envelope from a law office with her name above the firm's. I sat in my car and opened it, tore the corner like a kid ruining a birthday card and then forced myself to slide the papers out cleanly. It was their version of a settlement. She wanted the couch, the sideboard we bought off Facebook Marketplace, a mutually equitable division of any marital retirement contributions, which is a real phrase you learn when a lawyer wants something inside of a phrase, and 6 months of temporary support given the suddenness of the separation. There was a handwritten paperclip note in her looping, neat writing that said, we can save money if we both sign now. I still love you. I am going to therapy. I flattened it with my palm and could feel where her pen had pressed a little harder on love. My lawyer took one look at a picture of the first page and said, we'll respond formally. Don't call her. Then, like she was checking a box, if she shows up somewhere you are, keep a record. I said okay and felt like I was saying okay to the inside of a refrigerator. I went back to the studio to make coffee and the burner phone I'd stupidly taken and then powered down was a thought I couldn't stop tripping on. It was in a Ziploc bag in the freezer because I read somewhere that's what you do when you think you're going to turn something over and don't want it messing with anything in the meantime. I took it out and set it on a dish towel while it thawed like a very small fish. When it booted, it did what phones do, started talking without asking. The Telegram book club chat was a scroll of panic in bubbles, hundreds of messages sent since I'd last looked. The group icon was gone. They'd renamed it closed. One of her friends, C, had added a new person, C's husband. He wasn't saying anything. He was posting screenshots. I didn't spend an hour reading through their implosion. I gave it 10 minutes. It was enough. Who did this? Which one of you? We were careful. Someone told them it was me. Not my name, exactly, just her husband, and then it turned into the same fever I'd already seen up close at my door. Apologies that weren't, accusations lobbed like shoes, strange logistics questions sitting beside moral panic. One of the brunch faces texted my wife in the chat directly, said, "You told me he was boring, not cruel." I put the phone down like it had heated up and called my lawyer again. She told me to stop looking, stop touching, bring the device to her office that afternoon, and let her return it softly through counsel with a note that it was found powering on in a common basket by the door. "You don't want anyone to say you tampered with anything," she said. She was right. I put it back in the bag and stared at it like it might sprout legs. Before lunch, the clinic did call. The baseline was clean, the ones that need time needed time. The nurse asked me if I wanted those results over the phone or in person. I said phone. I didn't have it in me to sit in another little room with a tissue box on the table pretending to read a brochure. After I hung up, I texted her mother and asked if they wanted me to box up the things she'd left on my side, because some stuff had bled onto my shelves, my drawer, the way it does. Her mother asked if I could meet her at their house instead. "I've cooked," she said, and I almost said no because I didn't want to be fed like I deserved it. I went because I didn't want to hurt her. Her parents live in a single-story place with a porch that collects leaves in corners. Her dad had pulled the curtains back all the way like they needed light in there. She wasn't home. They told me she had an appointment. They didn't say what kind. Her mother put a plate in front of me like she thought if she staged a normal scene enough times, it would stick. I ate a bite and then another and realized I was starving. Her mother watched me like she was checking if I still had a human function, and when she decided eating still worked, she let out a breath I don't think she knew she was holding and sat down with her own fork. We didn't talk about everything. We talked about small rocks on the bottom of the river. Her dad said he'd found a key on her old key ring that didn't belong to anything in their house or mine. Small brass, no label. He set it on the table on top of a folded paper towel. "Storage unit, maybe?" he said. I told him I didn't know. He told me not to go looking. He looked like he'd already done too much of that himself. Her mother asked me if I wanted the wedding album. I told her I didn't think I did. She said, "I'll keep it," like she was putting it in a freezer inside herself. When I left, her dad hugged me and his shirt smelled the same as the day he hugged me at the diner: soap, coffee, the faint scent of sawdust he always has even though he retired 10 years ago. Back at my place, there was a man at the mailboxes trying to fit a package that didn't fit. He asked me if I was 3B. I told him yes and he shifted the box into my hands and said, "It rattles," like a warning. It was from her job, addressed to her full name and my address because she still hadn't changed it anywhere. I put it on the counter without opening it and called the number on the label. HR answered, and I told them she didn't live there anymore and this was an improper address. They were careful, the way companies are careful, but the woman on the line said, "Thank you for letting us know. We'll update our records," with an undertone that made me wonder if my wife's therapy appointment had more to do with a meeting with her manager. I don't know. I'm not the person who gets to know anymore. At 3:15 my lawyer slid the phone into an evidence bag and all but patted me on the head for doing the right thing. While I was in her office, a man I didn't know called 3 times from a number I didn't recognize. I silenced it, then he left a voicemail that started with, "Be a man and pick up," which was funny and not funny at the same time. He said his name and I recognized it from a Venmo handle on a screenshot one of the other partners sent me, not the guy from the last night, another one, from the revolving door. He told me he didn't appreciate me ruining people's lives like we were in a western and I'd shot his wagon. "You didn't have to tell anyone," he said. He asked where I lived, like he thought it belonged to him as information. I didn't call back. I sent the voicemail to my lawyer, and she said, "Save everything. If he contacts you again, we can include him in the protective order." I hadn't said the words protective order out loud yet. They felt big in my mouth. "It's not dramatic," she added, like she could hear me bracing for a label. "It's a fence. You need a fence." I went to the courthouse the next morning because I'm good at being told what to do when I'm in a place for the first time. The clerk had a face like a school guidance counselor and a pen attached to the counter with a plastic cord. I filled out boxes and lines. Describe incidents, knocks on doors, showing up uninvited, messages looking for where I was, a voicemail from a man I don't know asking for my address. The words looked thin in black ink. A judge signed a temporary order for 14 days while they schedule a hearing. "If she violates it, call the police, don't call her parents," the clerk said, and for some reason that's what got me. The idea that someone had drawn a line and written a little instruction on it. I thought a lot of the silence I was getting from the other side was because they were humbled. It wasn't. They were regrouping. That afternoon, one of the partners, Dan, asked if I wanted to meet the guys who wanted faces to names. I said okay and met 3 men in a back booth of a greasy spoon that smelled like onions and coffee grounds. It was, for lack of a better word, strange. We are not a club anyone signed up for. C's husband was there, the calm cracked right down the middle. He had the gym towel still looped through his bag strap and a 1,000-yard stare that made me feel like he was watching himself from behind his own head. The married guy who had stayed quiet on the group chat sat down and put his hands flat on the table like he was showing he wasn't armed. We weren't there to plot anything. You can't fix something like this with a plan. We said names and dates like you say present in school. We lined up calendars and jolted at how many times the edges overlapped. The strangest detail was the dumbest. 2 different men had apparently been introduced to the same fake name by my wife on 2 different nights. She called herself L to both of them, spelled like that. I don't know why that nearly made me laugh, except that sometimes your brain wants to let out steam through the wrong valve. C's husband told me he'd gone back through his camera roll and found a photo he didn't remember taking of a road sign an hour outside of town. He said he must have sent it to himself driving back from somewhere and forgot. He called it the dumbest breadcrumb. We shook hands in the parking lot, someone muttered, "Good luck," and it didn't sound like a throwaway. I drove home and sat in my car until my legs tingled because my body thought I was still moving. The hearing notice came the next day for the restraining order. It was scheduled for Friday at 9. There is something about slapping time on a wound that makes it sting. Thursday night, 11:37, my phone lit up with a number blocked to no caller ID. I let it go and voicemail picked up a sound that wasn't words. Just breath, one long exhale and then a click. I typed "take a breath, do not react" on my notes app like I was babysitting myself. She showed up for the hearing. She wore a blazer like that was armor and a shirt I bought her for an interview 3 years ago. She looked at everything but me. The judge was brisk and human in equal parts. He asked me if I had anything to add beyond what I'd written and I said yes, the voicemail, and I held up my phone like a student with a hall pass. He asked her if she had anything to say, and she started to cry, but it didn't look like the kind that burns your face. It looked like something she had rehearsed in a mirror. She said she had a right to speak to her husband about their marriage, and the judge said, without looking up, "No, you have a right to be responded to, and he has a right not to respond." He extended the order for 6 months, said, "This doesn't mean you're a bad person, it means you need space," and banged a tiny gavel that looked ornamental. When we were walking out, she veered toward me. The bailiff lifted a hand without moving from his spot. It took everything in me not to look over my shoulder like he was warning somebody else. On the way back to the studio, I stopped by my old building's office to hand in the last key. The manager had put my name on a little white envelope and written, "Thank you," like I'd shoveled his sidewalk. I slid the key across and he said, "We'll do the walkthrough this afternoon. If there's any damage," and then he trailed off because he looked at my face and understood that word lives in more than walls. I told him to keep my number for final prorations. He said he would, and then, like he couldn't help himself, she was very polite, like he needed one nice thing to say. There are practical ripples I hadn't anticipated. Her health insurance was under my plan. HR at my company sent an email with bullet points about qualifying life events and deadlines. You can love someone, marry them, add them to your benefits, and then remove them like a dependent you outgrew. I stared at the form. It asked me to select a reason from a drop-down. I picked legal separation/divorce filing and my hand shook just a little and I imagined the exact coded field in the database swallowing that answer. I got a text that night from a number labeled Cousin Aaron on my phone that I hadn't saved because it came through via a group chat once and I never bothered. He said, "She's telling everyone you're controlling and that you went through her phone and told lies to try to trap her." He followed it with, "I know it's not true. I knew last Christmas," and attached a photo of her in a parking garage, blurry, her hair caught mid-turn, the timestamp tiny at the bottom. He'd seen her. He didn't say anything because their family doesn't do confrontation, they do casseroles. It didn't make me angry. It made me tired in a deep way, like I'd been asked to carry someone else's piano up a flight of stairs. Friday night, back at my studio, I made real food. Nothing heroic, just chicken in a pan with lemon and green beans and a pinch of salt that turned into an actual meal. For the first time in weeks, it tasted like something you'd make for a person you like. I bought a second fork at CVS right before, because it felt stupid to wash the same one between bites. That second fork sat beside the first like proof that I could add. I'd thought that once papers were filed and hearings were scheduled the chaos would taper. It shifted. Saturday morning, 9:02, there was a knock I recognized because we all knock in patterns. It was my neighbor across the hall, an older woman who waters her plants with a wine bottle full of tap water like it's a ritual. She said she'd had a girl knocking earlier asking for me. My name, my unit. The girl was dark hair, sunglasses inside, nervous hands. She asked if the girl was a friend. I said no. My neighbor looked at me over the top of her glasses and said, then I told her I'd call the police if she waited. She went back to her plants like she'd hosed down a driveway. I put the deadbolt on and stood inside my own door listening to the blood in my ears. The order held. That's what orders are for. If you want a clean red bow, I don't have one. I have a court date on a calendar and an email from my lawyer with a draft response that reads like a foreign language I'm learning by memorization. I have an old key ring with one key removed and a ring-shaped divot in my palm where the metal used to press. I have a table with 2 forks. This afternoon I got a text from a number I didn't know that left my stomach on the floor for a second. It was the girlfriend of last night's guy. She introduced herself with 3 short words, then said she had found me because she went through his phone while he was in the shower and for once a stereotype saved a life. She said, "I'm leaving." Then she said, "I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed to tell someone who understands why you can look at someone and see a person and a stranger at the same time." I told her, "I'm sorry. It's not your fault." It felt both useless and true. I walked to a hardware store after that and bought a plant I don't know how to take care of and a bag of coffee I do. The cashier put the plant in a paper sleeve with a square bottom that made it stand up on its own like a little house with a green roof. When I got home I put it by the window and spent 10 minutes googling how not to kill it. It's nothing. It's a thing that grows if you don't starve it and don't drown it and give it light. I can do that. I can do that for a plant. I can try to do it for me. That's what's new. That, and a little more air in the room. A little more space between the knocks. A phone that sits face down and doesn't buzz for a whole hour. Then a night that feels like a night and not a vigil. I'm not better. I am a person moving forward in a straight line through molasses, which is still a line. That feels like more than it did yesterday.